Okay, so it's a little bit heavy-duty stuff we're going through, okay? So just bear with me. And the topic is adaptation and working with adaptive reactions. And why would we want to know that? How do you guys, how familiar are you with notion of adaptation in general?
The notion?
Notion of adaptation.
The energy of?
Well, how important it is, do you think?
To adapt.
Very, very important.
Very important.
Especially in certain areas.
It's not just important. It's adaptation is a general principle of life, and as we always say, there is a main rule: adapt or die. Because if we don't know how to deal with adaptation, and if we cannot adapt to something, we will cease to exist. System cannot exist in the world if it cannot adapt to that world. So adaptation and natural healing is basically the same thing. And that's why we are talking about it, because in our concept, natural healing and adaptive reactions is the same thing. So when we're talking about healing from something, we are talking about improving adaptation. So let's quickly go through the general theory, and then we'll concentrate on practice, how we actually deal and improve adaptive reactions in the body. So topic we call health, disease, and adaptation. We already know that we are all semi-open systems that keep the constancy of internal environment. Remember that funny slide about homeostasis with the broccoli, the smiling broccoli? So we all keep the constancy of internal environment in the ever-changing outside world and exchange energy, information, and substance with that world. We all already know that. We also know that we're a living system that keep self-control over its own affairs, that regulates its own affairs and can reproduce itself. Self-control, self-regulation, self-reproduction. 3 qualities of living systems. When something goes out of balance, the system includes mechanisms of self-regulation and puts it back into balance. For example, if we are hungry and we are losing sugar, then our entire system will work towards finding food. Everything will be directed toward finding food, includes our emotion and mental capability as energy. So we find food, we consume food, we increase our sugar level, we are okay, we are balanced again. But the system will have a dominant objective to find food, just because your sugar level goes down, right? So the entire system will work towards that objective. It's that important, self-regulation. Now imagine that we have to keep constancy of the internal environment in the ever-changing outside world. Outside environment is never stable. So what do? We need a buffer between inside world and outside world. And the buffer is a system of adaptation. We can't expect outside world to change according to what we want. We rather change according to the outside world. And that what helps us change and keeps us in balance with the outside world is the system of adaptation. Now what this system consists of? That's a general principle, right? Adaptation will bring us back to harmony, back to balance with the outside world. If we are not in that state of balance, we experience what? Dis-ease. Our condition is not easy. Notion of adaptation is not just physical. It is emotional, mental, spiritual, you name it. If your kid goes into new school and experiences a peer pressure and can't stand the peer pressure, can't adapt, what happens then? We know how often kids commit suicides because they can't stand peer pressure. If system cannot adapt, it will die. And it can be physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. Notion of adaptation works on every level. Now, we experience falling out of balance at all times. Environment changes, we are stable, so at all times something is not in balance. But our self-regulation is so great that it puts everything in normal right away. And those of you who does EAV, or electrodermal screening, you know that there is no state of ideal energetic balance. There is no such thing. At all times something is hyper-functioning, something is hyper-functioning, but then situation changes. Our system is very dynamic, as well as the outside world is. So we're adapting to something at all times. And we don't feel sick. We just know it's an imbalance, which our system puts back into balance automatically. It doesn't have to involve the entire system. Just part of our system can work and put it back to balance. In general, we can concentrate on something, we can do something. In the meanwhile, our system is self-regulating, adapting to something. We do not experience dis-ease if our adaptation works fine. We only experience state of dis-ease if our adaptation is failing somewhere. If we cannot adapt to something, then we do not feel easy. When we feel something is not quite right, we cannot digest the food, or we cannot stand this particular environment, or we cannot stand that particular person. Something is not right, and we experience that discomfort, that imbalance, that dis-ease. What it tells us is that our adaptation is failing somewhere. If adaptation works fine, we don't feel it. Okay, so let's put kind of sign of equality between natural healing and adaptation. If we heal fine, we adapt fine. If we adapt fine, we heal fine. Natural healing and adaptation is somewhat the same thing. Now, when we experience dis-ease, is it good or bad? It's good. Because dis-ease is a challenge. Dis-ease is not, it's not something bad, like pain. It's not something bad. It's just a signal to us that something is not easy, it doesn't come easy, something we need to work on. But see, in dealing with dis-ease, our system evolves. Our system grows and matures. In response to challenge, we learn. And again, challenge can be physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. Our system, in order to adapt to new conditions, to something that doesn't come easy, has to restructure itself. See, it has to put elements in different order. It has to do something in order to improve itself, in order to match. By very fact that system is rearranging its elements, it evolves, it changes, it matures and grows. And you know it very well. When, as a child, you experience different challenges and you go through challenges, and when you overcome a challenge, how do you feel? Great, you feel great, you feel empowered. Yeah, now I can do it, right? I can overcome that. Next time similar challenge comes along, there is no fear anymore because you know you can do it. Same thing goes for diseases and dealing with different factors of the outside environment. Imagine the child who just came into the world. And child has to adapt to the outside world with all its viruses and bacteria and you name it, because we need to learn how to live in harmony with our Mother Earth and environment and all the living creatures and non-living creatures on Earth. We have to learn it in order to establish harmonious relationship. What if a child grows in totally isolated environment? If environment that he is surrounded with doesn't present any challenge, then when he grows as an adult, he doesn't know how to deal with that. And everything is a danger now. And everything is fear fearful, right? The child grows fearful. Because he doesn't know how to deal with this and doesn't know how to deal with that. So when I see those commercials on TV where mom runs around spraying with Lysol everything in the house, what does that tell me? That the child will grow up with allergies. Because the poor immune system doesn't know how to deal with all these normal bacteria and viruses of the outside environment. Child's immune system is constructed in a way that it will learn how to deal with, well, child will be in the mud, in the puddles, and it will learn how to deal with those microbes and in that environment. The immune system of a small child is constructed to face those challenges. Later on in life, the immune system is not working the same way. And later in life, when we meet those bacteria and viruses, our immune system says what? What the heck is it? And it's overreacting. So overreacting immune system is what? Allergy. Allergy is a normal reaction of our immune system. It's just not adequate. It's hyper reaction. Now we start hyper reacting on pollens, hyper reacting on foods, hyper reacting on this and that, which normal body do not supposed to hyper react on. And all because we didn't learn in time how to deal with these things. And we, of course, it's not the only reason how we get allergies. Immunizations, okay? Immunizations. You introduce a young body to something it's not supposed to have yet. It's not ready. Forget even dangers of mercury that comes with that, or any other toxicity that comes with that. But they're even introducing the young system to the kind of alien life form which the young system is not ready to meet yet, creates overreaction of the immune system, and then overreaction of the immune system stays because now our immune system is all alert and it overreacts on everything else. Now think, can emotions create overreacting of immune system? Big time. Big time. If you scratch every allergy, you may find that in the core it would be an emotional trauma somewhere that just extrapolated on the other things which were associated maybe with that emotional trauma at that moment in time. Maybe when that emotional trauma happened, the child was, or even an adult person, was exposed to some chemicals, some smells, some food. It's just coincidence. But now that substance is anchored to that emotion. And now overreacting to the emotion, being anchored to the reaction to the physical substance, creates overreaction to the physical substance. It may be just a coincidence. And yet in our system, it's tightly anchored now. There is actually a notion in psychology, anchoring. When you really want a system to remember something, good or bad, you put some kind of influence on the body, physical typical influence, which is closely connected with that emotion, which you want to anchor. For example, a smell, or even a touch. So if you want to anchor someone, you create a memory of, let's say, good thing. That's how you deal with fears, by the way. If someone has a fear of spiders, and you create that condition that, imagine that bad hairy spider somewhere there, and at the same time, let's get your memory of the best childhood emotion you ever had. Something really good, maybe amusement park, or maybe your father coming back from work, whatever, that very, very positive emotion. Okay, let's be in that emotion, let's think about it. And at that time, when a client thinks about that something positive, you do some, maybe tap on the, on the arm, or do some kind of touch the shoulder, do something that, and repeat it a couple times. Now, positive emotion is anchored to the tapping on the hand. Now let's go to the image of the big hairy spider. And the client goes to the image of hairy spider at the same time. Psychologist will be tapping on the hand. So now the positive emotion, the tapping anchored to the positive emotion contradicts the fear of a spider. It's very common and very actually easy to do. So if you guys want, you can do it for yourself. Just anchor some of your positive, really positive emotion to something. And it can be food. And you know how sometimes smell, very familiar smell of something that you met many years ago, all of a sudden brings all the sorts of memories. Right? So try that, by the way. If you want to contradict some fear that you have, anchoring technique is really simple. So create positive image, create that something that reminds you of that image, then get the negative image and contradict it with some kind of anchor. So in any way, how did I get to anchoring? With allergies, of course. So now with allergies, you're something that was connected to the emotion that we experience, strong emotion. Now that smell or that molecule will create that overreaction of the immune system. And now this is anchored. This is linked. So here we go, your allergy. So what we end up with, that allergies are not always physical. And remember, we had that condition, allergies, how to deal with allergies. It is an immune system, definitely. It is overreacting of the immune system. So all we need to do is just rebalance the immune system. Sometimes we can get to the core of where allergy started. Sometimes we can't. But we still can balance the immune system in order to teach it not to overreact. We still can do it. So that's what we will be doing. But anyway, with our children, that's how inability to adapt creates condition that we carry through our life, like allergies, for example. So it's overreacting to something that is unfamiliar. When we do suppose to have this exposure to these influences in the early childhood, we don't have it then, and then wrong timing. When we do expose ourselves to that, our system doesn't know how to deal with it. So is it important to have those challenges in time? Absolutely. When we're ready. Challenges are good. Diseases are good because they teach you something. DJ will agree with me that cancer is maybe considered good because it teaches you something. It's there for a reason. You come out of that challenge. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, they say. You come out of that challenge, you're a different person. You learn something, you matured, you evolved, you growed, and you become a better you. More you than you were before. Well, and yes, some challenges can kill you, absolutely. And some systems can survive a challenge. But it's our job to make sure that, as guides, as transformational health coaches, that the challenges we introduce our clients to are adequate. So they are challenges, but our clients are still strong enough to overcome that challenge. So challenges are good. So diseases are actually a necessary attribute of life. And if we don't have diseases and disorders, then we are not prepared for the adult life, because we will have exposure to viruses and staphylococcus and toxicity, and we inevitably live in an environment which is hostile, unfortunately. Humankind did create hostile environment for itself. So we are living in it, we will be living in it, and have to face it. So we have to prepare ourselves for it. You know how kings in the old ages, when they were afraid of being poisoned, right? Remember how, kings were often poisoned? You know what they did? They would take a little bit of that poison every day. To strengthen their system, to teach their system to deal with their challenge. But dose, carefully dose, adequately dose. So it creates a challenge, but not too much for the system to not survive that challenge. So just keep that image. And if you want to really learn how to deal with the challenge, expose yourself to just a little bit of it every day. And again, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, doesn't matter. Anything you want to overcome and learn to overcome. Now, if you already know that you're strong enough to survive a poison, do you think a king is afraid of poison anymore? No, because they know their system can sustain it. Fear goes away. Bye-bye. We only fear something that we don't know. We only fear something if we are not sure we can face it. So how do you get rid of fears? Face it. Face it. And if you know that you cannot face the whole thing, create a condition for yourself to face a little bit at a time. And eventually you get rid of them, whatever your fears are. So disease is good, right? That's our kind of, disease is natural healing, disease is good. System evolves. So that's we already kind of know. Disease is an adaptive reaction. It is the body is trying to adapt to something. It's just going too slow. The adaptation is not happening easy. It's happening every step of the way, takes a lot of energy from the system. And because every step of the way takes energy from the system, it's going and it becomes perceivable for the body. The body now can notice it. Normal adaptation, when it's fast, it's unnoticeable. But slow adaptation is noticeable for the body. So now we will be experiencing disease. But again, remember in the very beginning we said that every process in the body is a cycle. So disease is a cycle too. It's adaptive reaction. It started from the body being exposed to something it needs to adapt to. So that was a 0 point. Now the body needs to adapt. So it has to go through kind of a critical stage of interaction with that exposure. And then go back to 0. Adaptation completed. The body now established the balance again. But it's already different body. So now it's already turn of a spiral, so it's 0 on the next quality level. So we made one cycle, and on the ascending spiral of our evolution, of our adaptation to the outside world. The point is, disease started from 0, it has to end with 0. It has an end, always. It's just we do not always meet that end, but it does have an end. Acute disease is just a slow adaptive reaction which will end with a 0 sooner or later. And we can say we healed. Let's say virus, flu virus. We know we're going to heal. It's just some people who have really fast adaptation will complete the cycle in 3 days. Develop antibodies, and off we go. No more virus. If the system is not well prepared and has other problems and other energy cysts and energy flows really slow, information flows in the system really slow, system can't respond fast enough, and you will have 2-week flu with possible development of complications, because now lots of energy is wasted on every step of the way just to push the cycle through. So it will be 2-week cycle. But we still end by development of antibodies, and still will end so there is no trace of a flu. Maybe consequences, but still no flu. These are acute disorders, and we typically heal from acute disorders completely. Not always, unfortunately. Unfortunately, with all the energy cysts that we accumulate over our lifetime, information is not flowing freely. We are not self-transparent. We are not radiant. We have energy cysts which slow down information flow. And because of that, we do heal, but we only heal, let's say, 80-90%. Even if injuries or traumas, about 80-90%, just enough to keep functioning, but not enough for the memory of the injury to get out of our system. So we will always have this little thing, little cyst sitting there reminding us that we did have that problem. And healing doesn't quite finish this because body just doesn't have enough energy to finish it. Because by the time it goes through the cycle, slow cycle, there are new challenges coming along. And the body needs energy to meet new challenges. So it's allocate energy resources to something else, never finishing the first one. Unfortunately, we see it even with teenagers. And if you guys deal with sports, especially sports injuries and traumas, you probably notice that even teenagers do not heal completely. They would heal to a certain extent, but that old injury or trauma will always be there to remind that yes, it was a fracture, it was a sprained ankle, it was something. It never goes away completely. And of course, what happens in the future? More and more energy cysts, and by the time a person is 30 years old, they are wreck. They can't even compete anymore. Their bodies are wreck because they never healed fully. So our job is to make sure that whatever the body is healing from finalizes the cycle, finishes it, give extra energy with the laser, help with the scanner, because scanner will focus the body's attention on the problem until it's over with. And now it's gone from the cellular memory like a flu. You finish the flu, gone. And we're supposed to have that with any disease or disorder. Finish the cycle, gone. Possible to do that with arthritis, for example. What do you think? Theoretically, absolutely possible. Asthma, theoretically possible. Any disease, cancer, theoretically possible. It's a cycle. We want to make sure that we get to the end zero. We do not always can do that. There are different reasons why we cannot achieve it, and you know it, emotional, mental, spiritual. But we have to get there. Theoretically speaking, we can get there, and then we have the spontaneous healing, miraculous spontaneous healings from dreadful MS or fibromyalgia, or how many situations when fibromyalgia is gone, like DJ was telling you, it was gone. So it's possible. Now, out of that, we need to speed up adaptation. We already know, right? That's what we need to do. In order to get from our cycle to the final zero, we need to speed up adaptive process, adaptive reaction. Now, how do we do that? Where do we find those adaptive reactions to speed them up? Of course, we already know that key element in all that is communication. So we need to improve communication in the body to make it more coherent, for the orchestra to play better, to instruments to listen to each other. So communication is the key. Let's concentrate or focus on the communication systems of the body so we can improve communication in the body, and as a result all our reactions, including adaptive reactions, will improve and will be faster. Now, what are the elements of system of adaptation? One of the very natural elements is a skin, because it's the natural border between outside world and inside world, right? So skin is actually the largest organ in the human body. I don't know if you realize it, guys, but it has a surface about 1.8 square meters, so it's a pretty large organ, and it weighs about 11 kilos. So just our little tiny skin. So our skin is a computer screen of the body. Anything that is going on inside the body will be reflected on the skin. Anything that the body experiences will be reflected on the skin. So it's a two-way information street. So information goes in, skin is the first one to respond. Information goes out by skin showing certain changes. And in the beginning, changes on the skin surface will be just electrical, because skin has these bioactive points, acupuncture points, that are capacitors of negative charges of electrons. So electrons are unevenly distributed on the skin surface, and they create areas of different resistance, different skin resistance. Areas where electrons are concentrated or bioactive points, they're areas of very low electrical resistance. So when you measure it, it's actually ready to transport electrons along the channels and meridians, so they have very low electrical resistance naturally. Other areas have high electrical resistance. But no matter what changes are happening in the body, whatever processes the skin is displaying, the first changes will happen in the electrical resistance. So you will have areas on the skin which are informationally connected to one of the energy cysts. And your energy cysts will be displayed on the skin surface. First, just with a change in electrical resistance, just in electron distribution. You can't really see those changes, but we have the machine that can detect those changes. Our favorite scanner, right? When you run it along the skin surface, that's what scanner will detect. The areas where electrical resistance is different. And it's okay, that something is not quite right there. We don't know what is not right. We do not know what process is displayed on the skin surface. But what we know is that this area is different than the other areas of the skin. And we call this area asymmetry, because it's asymmetric with regards to the other parts. And that's, guys, your agenda when you're working with a scanner, to find those areas. So you know when you found area, you're moving your scanner along the skin, and all of a sudden the machine's stuck. That's why it's stuck, because it's detected the area where skin resistance is different. So now you know when you're on that spot, you are informationally connected to the energy cyst, because that's where the cyst is displayed, right? Now, by influencing that area, you will be bringing changes into the energy cyst. That's how scanner breaks the wall of the energy cyst. Let's say you have an arthritic knee, and you would run scanner around arthritic knee, and sure enough, scanner will probably stuck everywhere around the knee. But if you run your scanner, let's say, on the front of the chest, the scanner will be running smoothly and nicely if there is nothing, of course, underneath. You cannot influence the knee through the chest if there are no representations on the skin. But if you run scanner around the knee, sure enough, you will have direct effect. So you cannot really address the energy cysts of the arthritic knee through the chest unless there is representation here. Got that, right? So you need to find the areas of the asymmetries. And we remember that any energy cyst can be reflected in many different areas on the body, not just one. Because our body is holographic, and it has the entire body in several different parts. Like our body is completely displayed on our palms, completely displayed on the bottom of our feet. That's how reflexology works. Completely displayed on our ears, on our tongue, on our irises, and many other parts of the body. Our body is holographically displayed everywhere, which means we can address, let's say, liver from many different points. You put your scanner on the ear, sure enough, you will influence your liver. You put your scanner on the area on the palm, which is corresponding to the liver. Of course you will influence the liver. You can influence the liver from your spine, from the bottom of your feet. You can influence liver directly from the skin surface, right above the liver. You can do all that, and all this will help. But you cannot really influence a liver from, let's say, left cuff. You're on the end, if there's nothing there, if scanner is not detecting anything, you can't expect liver to heal from that point. scanners of new generation or second generation scanners are going into the direction that they will be working holographically no matter from where. It's like you can replicate the body, clone the body from just one epithelial cell. The scanners of the next generation probably will be able to work no matter where on the body. Just fix the codes, the broken codes. But at this moment in time, even the second generation scanners still need to be placed in close proximity of the suffering organ or on a point of representation. So, direct projection of the organ. Of course, projection of your complaint, right? Because complaint are absolutely connected to your disease. Ears, palms, bottom of the feet, any area that you can find representation of that particular organ you are interested in will work. So that's where you can put your laser or your scanner. Laser is not that topically careful. You don't have to watch for exact location of a laser because laser cascades, the effect of the laser cascades through the body. Remember we're talking about soliton wave. So laser carries the wave through the body. So even if you put a laser away from the particular organ, it will still cascade. And yet we still suggest to keep it closer to the sick organ. But scanner is still quite precise in where exactly on the body it needs to be positioned. So we recommend still to look for those areas of small asymmetries which are different from the rest of the skin by certain characteristics. We will get to that. So those areas are obviously found on the skin. Just remember for now that skin is your screen. You can read it as basically the diagnostic chart of the body. Anything that is happening inside will be displayed on the skin in the beginning as electrical changes in resistance and distribution of electrons. But later on, when these changes exist for a long time and persist, the skin literally develops certain visible changes, like areas of itchiness, constant itch or constant scratch, or some kind of pigment spots. So when you see certain changes on the skin that appear during your lifetime and were not there when you were born, but then you develop them, they're most likely representation of something that is happening inside. And you know how liver disorders affect the skin condition, right? You start develop all these dark spots and all this yucky stuff. So if you have some kind of persistent itchy spot or spot with hyperkeratosis or this tough skin or lesions or pigment spots, that is something inside your system that is there for a long time. It's a cyst that displayed on your skin, and until you deal with the cyst you can't get rid of that spot. But ideally we should have all this nice even skin. Maybe even wrinkled a little bit, but at least clean. So, but best case scenario. Now, the next part of system of adaptation is our nervous system, because you remember we are working on communication. So, nervous system is our wiring. So, it's a big part of communication. Now, nervous system works on electricity, emits electrical impulses. We already know that. Next part would be especially important part of a nervous system is an autonomic nervous system. And remember we did the protocol, the ANS balancing protocol. This chart just shows you pretty well where different parts of autonomic nervous system are positioned. Here we have central nervous system, spinal cord, and almost all of the parts you will see are connected to the sympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic has only a few representations. Parasympathetic we have in the eye. Parasympathetic, well, on the left you see parasympathetic parts, on the right sympathetic. And we will have pelvic nervous plexus, which we address through the tailbone, right? Remember that? And we have a vagus nerve, big one, over here, that innervates our internal organs, like heart, our lungs, our intestines, our liver. They all have branches of vagus nerve, but that's hidden inside our abdominal cavity. So if we want to address parasympathetic nervous system, vagus nerve on the neck, solar plexus, tailbone. That's the closest part. Now, in the central nervous system, that is an interesting formation, just so you remember, the kind of enigma, a reticular formation in the brain, lately connected to the part of the system of adaptation a lot. It's like a little net that permeates the entire central nervous system, brain and spinal cord. Now we get the neurons, and of course we already talked about that regulatory peptides in the synapses. Remember, that's a big part of system of adaptation. Now it's a humoral factor. Now it's chemical substances that not just electrical impulses that transmit information. So information will be carried over by certain molecules. Hormonal endocrine system, of course, hormones are part of our system of adaptation. It's another version of information carrier. And low molecular hormones, it's our little regulatory peptides which are released in the synapses of nervous fibers. So that's one nervous fibers releases regulatory peptide being absorbed on the other side of the synapse to create information flow. That's 4 groups of neuromediators or regulatory peptides. And that's how they look. They're pretty large molecules, regulatory peptides. Have pretty long lifespan in the body liquids, and they can be carried along the bloodstream on a long distance. They are pretty unique molecules and considered to be a package of programs. That's how our physiological reactions are triggered in the body by certain chemical substances, regulatory peptides. And we of course know that scanner stimulates release of regulatory peptides in large quantities, creating the internal pharmacy in the bloodstream. Third part of the communication system, our energy system, or system of channels and meridians, as well as chakras. And now we have influence on different parts of communication by our 3 technologies. Scanner influences communication directly addressing nervous system and indirectly addressing humoral system or release of regulatory peptides. Low-level laser would improve communication through coherent light, which is our high-speed internet in the body, right? And the blanket will improve the distribution of electrical charges on the skin surface, so we have more equal distribution of electrons and better conditions for our energy system to function.